You
No,
shouldn't hear me.
no, no, I'm unmuted. Wow, so we have people in the room and in the Zoom. That's always tough to manage.
The Zoom.
Always tough to manage. So it's good to see everyone there on the Zoom and in the room. Someone once told me that like you can't manage both. You have to choose, you're going to prioritize the people in the room or the people in the Zoom because you can't give eye contact to the room and to the Zoom. So it's always a challenge. And I don't know if I could do it. Every first of the month or first Sunday of the month, we get together here in person and on Zoom. And every month, I'm not sure if I'm about to pull it off. Not sure.
That's a good job.
Oh, yeah?
You're a master.
Yeah? Ah, no complaints?
No complaints.
Side of the table.
Okay.
Everyone on the Zoom is like, what were they chuckling about? They don't know. I don't think they hear
No, they
the chit chat.
Rabbi, do you want us to mute our videos so that way you can just focus on the room there?
No.
No.
Okay. All right.
No, because if they're giving me like the look, the look, I could just look at you guys and say, okay, we have our own little commune over here. That's the plan. It's like yeah, it's like you have to have a backup plan, because you never know when you're going to need to
So
have
it's us against them now.
yeah, you need to have an escape valve, someplace to run away in case things go south. What am I hearing? I'm hearing some noise. Is that your
Oh
phone?
no.
It's your phone. It's your phone. Did you make Nancy there you go. Who's the host here? Nancy's the host. Okay. We're in good hands.
She never says that.
Yeah.
Oh, Rod's doing it. Oh, boy, I hope this gets on the internet.
Hope he's pushing the right button.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I guess we start. I don't know. What else say? Should we start? Yeah, it's already recording. It's already recording. The subject that I chose to talk about today relates to Abraham, and specifically to what Abraham does in this week's Parsha. Of course, Abraham is our forefather. He's our patriarch. He's like the founder of our people, but he's really the founder of many nations. Abraham was originally called Abram, and God renamed him Abraham because Abraham means the master, the Av, the father of Ram, of Aram, that's where he was from. He was like the oracle of Aram, they would call him maybe. And when he was circumcised, God told him, no, you're changing your identity. You're Av Hamon Goyim. You're the father of many nations. Many different nations are going to emerge, are going to emanate from you. And we know today the majority of the world follows an Abrahamic religion, an Abrahamic way of living. I would say even those who are not religious, a lot of Abraham's ideals that he implanted in the world, that he pioneered, that he innovated, actually filtered down even to the secular world. So we're very much living in a world influenced by Abraham, and therefore he is justly called the father of many nations. Now, Abraham had a very long life, 175 years, and he accomplished a great many things. He is the one who, on his own, using his own faculties, his own intellect, his own strength of character, his own pursuit of truth, he arrived at the conclusion that there's one God, one omnipotent, omniscient, all-powerful, almighty God. All the powers are coalesced in one entity, and all the other quote-unquote gods are fake. And Abraham had the determination and the truth-seeking gene to not waver from that come what may. When the ruler the world, really, or the powerful ruler, said to Abraham, then called Abram, dispense with this monotheistic nonsense, or I will cast you into a fiery furnace. A furnace, by the way, that was so hot that when they wanted to drop the condemned man into it, they couldn't approach and put him into the fire. They had to use a catapult to launch him from a distance. That's how hot it was. Abraham, then called Abram, said, I don't care. This is the truth. I'm not going to waver from it. I'm not going to waffle. I'm not going to vacillate for any concern of the world. Kill me. This is truth. I'm going to stand by it. Abraham was thrown into the fire, and he was spared. The angel Gabriel said, I'm going to go down quickly to cool down the fire. And God said, no, I'm going to do it. I am one in the world, and Abraham, then known as Abram, he's one. He's the only one who stands up for me in the whole world of all created existence. He's the only person who defends me, who upholds belief in me. I, God Almighty himself, I'm going to go and save Abram. Indeed, Abram was saved, and the whole spectators, all the spectators were wowed by it. And there was one spectator in particular that wasn't sure if I should follow Abram or Nimrod, and that's Abram's own brother, Haran. And he had an inclination, he had a certain affinity for the value system of Abraham, and he wasn't sure. Should I follow the idols? Should I follow Nimrod? Should I follow my father, Terach? Should I follow the whole world? Or should I follow Abram? Abram was one man against the whole world. And then he said, you know what? I'll wait and see. We'll see what happens with Abram. Abram's thrown with the catapult into the fire. And he survives. And even the hair in his head doesn't get singed. Wow, what a miracle. Haran says, I'm with Abraham. I hereby volunteer. They put him on the catapult. They chuck him into the fire. And he gets burnt to a crisp instantly. And the reason why is because Abram went with the intention of dying for God. And Haran said, I'll have a miracle happen to me. And when you expect a miracle, miracles don't happen. And when you intend for God to save you, you don't have that same self-sacrifice and dedication and martyrdom that can evoke a miracle. Abraham says, listen, I don't care, I'll die for God. That act of self-sacrifice was a tremendous dedication and devotion for God that inspired, so to speak, that earned him the right, the merit to have a miracle done on his behalf. Haran went with the intention of surviving. He didn't have that self-sacrifice. He didn't earn that miracle. Now, this is a wonderful story, and it's told in the Torah, but it's only hinted to in the Torah. We meet Abram, really, at the age of 75. According to our sources, when Abram was 3, he began his process of discovering God. And he spent years until he clarified and codified and crystallized his faith. And he spent years going from place to place, debating and arguing and persuading and developing a movement of followers, legions of followers, tens of thousands of followers to follow the one true God. And he wrote books to advance the cause. And he developed a whole system of persuading masses. He would debate with the masses publicly and trounce his opponents. And then with every individual, he would provide him kindness, hospitality, love, food, nourishment, and a nudge to faith. Abraham was this incredible person. He was the most impactful, consequential person of all time. And in his day, he was renowned. Before he was 75, he ready to change the whole world. And God tells him when he's 75, leave. You're popular, you're making a huge impact, you're changing the world, you're ushering in an era of monotheism, leave. Move, go to a place where you're not known. Go to a place where you have to start from scratch. Round it up, back to zero, start from square one. And that's what Abraham's told in the Torah. The whole backstory of Abraham is omitted. It's a fascinating study to see what parts of Abraham's life are told in detail and what parts are hinted to and what parts are omitted entirely in the written Torah and of course are revealed to us in the oral Torah, in the Midrash, in the Talmud, and other sources. But it's fascinating because if I was writing the story of Abraham, if you were writing the biography of Abraham, you would start, he's 3 years old. His father is a purveyor of idols. And he takes the sledgehammer and he smashes all the idols. And he fights with his father and he fights with everyone. Takes on the whole world. In the words of the Midrash, Abraham's called the Ivri. Ivri means from Aver, right? Shem, grandson Aver. And that's his line. He's Ivri. Says the Midrash, says another interpretation. He is on the other side. The whole world's on one side. He's a maverick. He's an iconoclast. He's willing to stamp to the entire world. One man against everyone. With such belief in the truth of his position. The whole world can ridicule me, can mock me sardonically. For my belief, I don't care. I'll be myself. One man. Abraham with his wife, Sarah. The whole world, doesn't matter. That whole story is not told. We don't meet Abraham as a young man, fighting with all the pagans, arguing, debating, persuading, engaging in polemics, writing those books, amassing the legions of followers. We do hear about it. The souls that Abraham made in Haran. We read about it. But we don't know anything about that. That's not highlighted. Abraham is introduced. He's a prophet already. Meaning all the preliminary steps to be a prophet is already in the past, is not told in the Torah. Abraham is introduced, he's already a prophet at the age of 75. And that's a very curious thing that the Torah doesn't tell that very important part of Abraham's story. It's a question the Ramban talks about, other commentaries talk about. It's an interesting question. Why is a lot of Abraham's story omitted? And it's not only a question of what was omitted, it's also a question of what was written down. There are questions of omission and questions of commission. What was omitted and what was included. Because we do read Abraham goes to the land of Canaan and travels around the land of Canaan. Wonderful. Goes to Mitzrayim, goes to Egypt because there's a famine, has these interactions with Lot. All that is told. The war, 4 teens against 5 teens, Abraham intervenes. Abraham goes and saves Lot and wins the war. That is told. Abraham and Sarah, they're infertile. That's told. Abraham is encouraged to marry Hagar. Ishmael, circumcision, those parts are told. Lot's not told. That last week's parsha, all that we read about. And then we have this week's parsha, Parshas Va'era. Abraham is 3 days following his circumcision at the age of 99, which, from what I understand, is no walk in the park to be circumcised at that age. Today, a circumcision is done in 8 days. You don't need any anesthetics. You don't need a physician. You don't need a surgeon. You don't need anything. They do chit-chat. It's 8 days. The kid cries 10 seconds. That's it. They take a little wine from the circumcision ceremony, put it in the mouth. Gets a little drunk. No problem. And that's it. They don't even cry. Change the bandages, and that's it. Kid's fine. Some say they're a little traumatized. They don't talk for a whole year, but that's an old joke. They were so traumatized for a whole year they didn't talk. No, but it's a non-issue. You're 99 years old. No one's ever been circumcised. You do it. It's a big deal. And then we read this very dramatic story. Abraham is sitting outside of his tent in the heat of the day. It's hot. And God appears to Abraham. So there's a prophecy here. Right after the circumcision, there's a prophecy. And as God appears to Abraham, something else happens. And you read it. It's just an amazing confluence of events. God appears to Abraham. And of course, our sages tell us God comes to visit the sick. Abraham is sickly now in the aftermath of the circumcision. God comes to visit him, and right away, as God is there, appears to him, there's prophecy, 3 travelers also come. 3 travelers. And Abram has to choose. You have to make a choice. I have prophecy, which is the absolute apex of human experience, and I have 3 travelers. What do I do? Because I can't do both. You can't have prophecy and do hospitality. You can't have hospitality and prophecy. You have to make a choice. Abraham tells God, oh, 1 minute, just stay in the line. Stay in the line. I have to take care of some things. And of course, he tells them, go wash your feet. Why does he tell them to wash your feet? Because they're pagans. They worship the dust on their feet. And Abraham did hospitality and kindness for all, but he wouldn't tolerate even a little bit of idolatry. And he rushes and rushes and rushes. How do I know? The Torah tells us. He runs. And he runs again. 5 times it says in the story, he's rushing, he's running, he's hurrying. With tremendous alacrity. He's 100 years old almost. 3 days after the circumcision. It's very hot. Torah tells us it's very hot. Our sages explain, God made it super duper hot because Abraham needed some time off. If it's so hot, it's 150 degrees outside. Not a lot of travelers are traveling. Abraham would every day, all day, tend to travelers. That was the means by which he would influence them. He would say, come, get some food, get some water, let me take good care of you, I'll make you some food. And then they'd say, well, Abraham, you're so kind. I want to pay you for this tremendous hospitality. And Abraham says, you can pay me, or we could have it for free. All I want you to do is thank God, because after all, God provided this for you, not me. I'm just the implement. I'm the messenger. And they would say, God, you mean that little figurine that we genuflect to in the corner? No, you got it wrong. There's only one God. What are you talking about, Abraham? He would engage in conversation, persuade them. They become followers. That's what he did all day, every day. Abraham, Sarah, they had a whole operation going on. Abraham needs some time off. You need a recovery, convalescence. You need some convalescence following the circumcision. God makes it so hot. So no one comes to travel. So Abraham has a little respite to heal from the surgery. And Abraham's sitting outside the tent. Why is he outside the tent? Because he wants travelers. He's so committed to this value of doing kindness, of providing for others, of giving, of hospitality, and of faith. He's outside and he's miserable. Where are all my travelers? And God says, listen, humans aren't traveling today. I'll send you 3 messengers. They're angels, but they're masquerading as men, because Abraham was so sad by the fact that he did not have the opportunity to do kindness. But God made it that God's appearance in prophecy and the angels masquerading as men, it coincided. Abraham must make a choice. And Abraham teaches us a law. Gdola hachnasas archim, inviting guests and providing hospitality for travelers, is more important than prophecy. Where do we know that? Abraham. Abraham must make a choice. God appears, the 3 travelers, at least that's how they appear. They appear, and Abraham tells God, one moment, just stand in line, do me a favor. Don't leave. I want you to stay here, but I first have to take care of these wary travelers. And what does he do? He runs to Sarah. They made food. He runs to the cattle. They make a calf tender and good. He takes cream and milk and the calf, and he prepares it, and he's tending to these travelers. They're really angels. And the commentators explain that the angels, they're eating, but they're not really eating. They don't need food. They don't need carbs and calories and protein and sugars to survive. But they pretend, because, if you're doing the act, you got to do it all the way. You're doing the bit. You got to make sure that you present yourself completely as a human. And they have this wonderful get-together, and it's told in great detail what Abraham does and how he runs and who he involves. He involves his son Ishmael and Sarah, and they run to making food, running multiple times. He's rushing, he's hurrying, he's running to provide. And they're there, and he's tending to them as they eat. And they tell him, where's Sarah? And they give a promise. Oh, we're going to come back in a year. Sarah will have a son, which was a promise that Abraham already received in last week's parsha. And Abraham now speaks to God. It's a very interesting set of events, but the long and short of it is that the Torah tells us Abraham's kindness, and it illustrates it in this instance. Abraham did thousands of kindnesses every year. This is what he did all day and all night, for years, for decades. But the Torah gives us one illustration. It's 3 days following his circumcision. He's 99. It's the hottest day of the year. It's the hottest day on record. Global warming in full effect. God appears to him and says, oh, I'm coming to visit. 3 travelers, idolaters, at least that's how they appear, pagans. They show up and he runs and he makes them 3 different animals he slaughters for them. And all this fresh food to provide for them. That story is told. And it's a curiosity. We don't read about Abraham's kindness on an ordinary time, in an ordinary day. We read about it here. This is the one that really the Torah uses to present, to illustrate Abraham's superlative kindness and hospitality. Now, it is interesting that Abraham was, the person who tries to do kindness more than anyone else. His exemplary characteristic is that of kindness. Scripture says, Chesed la'Avraham, there's kindness for Abraham. He represents, he embodies, he's the exemplar of kindness. He's the paradigmatic example of kindness and hospitality. And here we see the story. But it is interesting that this is the episode that the Torah uses to illustrate his kindness. He provides kindness for angels. He gives them food, bread and meat and cream and milk. A whole feast he provides for angels. Angels who don't even need food. What a waste. Delicious steak dinner for angels who have absolutely no benefit, who don't need it at all. That's the example of kindness that the Torah illustrates. We have a question why the Torah omits a lot of Abraham's story. And the one story it chose to highlight, the spotlight on Abraham's kindness is with angels who need exactly 0 food. It was all a waste. Abraham accompanies these angels. They're going on to their next mission. They're traveling to Sodom and Gomorrah, the city in which Abraham's brother-in-law / nephew had relocated to in last week's parsha. They're going to overturn the city. And as Abraham is accompanying them, God says, Abraham, I can't withhold this information from him. Abraham's he's my boy, he's my man. He's going to be the one who's going to teach his children to continue the way of God, to do kindness and justice. I have to reveal to Abraham my plans. And God tells Abraham, the outcry of Sodom and Gomorrah, it's too great. It's too great. I'm going to destroy the city. I'm going to destroy this metropolis, this region, the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. And Abraham, the next part of the parsha, Abram begins this very long back and forth dialogue with God, trying to save the sinners of Sodom and Gomorrah. And Abraham tells God, you're going to kill the righteous with the wicked? You're the judge of all earth. Hashofet kol haaretz, the judge of all earth will not do justice? You're just. It's unjust to kill righteous with wicked together. Abram makes an argument. His argument is, how could you indiscriminately destroy the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah? Maybe there are righteous people there. And then Abraham begins this argument. Maybe we can find 50 righteous people in the city. And our commentaries explain why 50, because there were 5 different cities in this region, all going to be overturned, all going to be destroyed. And there's a principle that 10 righteous people can spare an entire city. And therefore, if you have 5 different cities, you need a minimum of 50 righteous people to save all 5 cities. So God, so Moshe, so Abraham tells God, maybe the 50 righteous people, we could put a stay on the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. Why? The five cities will be spared due to the 50 righteous residents of these cities. And when Abram's told, sorry, we don't have that. We don't have 50 righteous. Well, maybe there's 45. What's the argument of 45? Because maybe sometimes 9 is enough. Because God's presence is everywhere. So you'll have 9 representatives from every city, and then God, so to speak, will be the 10th representative. That's the argument. So 45 would save 5 cities. Well, we don't have 45 either. Well, maybe 4. We could save 4 cities. 40 righteous people could save at least 4 out of 5, 80%. You don't have that. 30. You don't have that. 20. You don't have that. 10. You don't have that. It's a very long part of the parsha where Abram's turning over every stone to find some sort of way to exculpate Sodom and Gomorrah. It doesn't work. The angels head to Sodom and Gomorrah. They extract Lot in a very dramatic fashion. His married daughters don't want to join, but his wife and 2 unmarried daughters join. They're told, don't look back. His wife makes the unfortunate decision to turn and look back. She gets turned into a pillar of salt. Lot survives, but the cities are overturned. We have a very long section of the parsha. The description of what happens to Sodom and Gomorrah. And Abram has this valiant effort to try to save these cities. And it doesn't work. He fails. The cities are overturned nonetheless. And the parsha ends with one of the most dramatic, maybe, events in all of human history. One of the most impactful, certainly, the binding of Isaac. God tells Abraham, take your son, your only son, the one that you love, take Isaac, bring him to Mount Moriah, offer him as a sacrifice atop that mountain. Now, Abraham, he spent his whole life to fight against idolatry. And some of the barbaric forms of idolatry engaged in child sacrifice. So Abram was told to do precisely what he spent his whole life to fight against. God told him, Isaac will be your successor. Isaac will be your continuator. He's going to be the one who will found your nation. Ki bi Yitzchak Torah Chazar. He will be your destiny. He will be your legacy. Now God's telling him to sacrifice, to offer him. This is the 10th and final test of Abraham's 10 tests. It's an unimaginable test where Abraham, who stood for only kindness, is told to do the most unkind thing in the world. Where Abraham stood for only faith, is told to behave like the pagans. Where Abraham was told contradictory statements by God. On one hand, Isaac will be your successor. On the other hand, go slaughter him. Abram doesn't challenge God. He listens. I always like to tell people, if God tells you to slaughter your son, don't listen. Okay, this is for Abraham. This is for Abraham. This is the 10th of 10 tests. And Abraham did it. And he harnessed his own donkey, and he takes Isaac together with his 2 lads, and they travel for 3 days, and they see Mount Moriah, and they see the cloud hovering above the mountain, and he tells his accompanying lads, you wait over here. They go up the mountain, and he prepares Isaac, and he bounds him on top of the altar, and he prepares all the paraphernalia. He's about to do it, and the angel stops him. Abraham, don't do it. Don't slaughter him. And don't even make a little nick. You want to have a little nick just as a memento, just as to remember this event. Don't do that, even that. Isaac is spared. Wonderful. And Abraham finds the ram thrashing about the brambles and offers the ram in Isaac's stead. Amazing. What a wonderful story. Abram's told to offer Isaac. as a sacrifice. Abram seems to be 0 for 3. He wants to do kindness, doesn't work. He wants to save Sodom and Gomorrah, doesn't work. He wants to offer Isaac as a sacrifice, doesn't work. The stories that the Torah highlights are all of Abraham's apparent failures. All the things, he wanted to do these wonderful things, and he seems to just be hitting into a brick wall, dead ends everywhere he turns. He wants to offer kindness. It's so hot, and he's just been circumcised. He wants to offer kindness, hospitality. God sends him angels. Don't need it. Don't benefit at all. He wants to save Sodom and Gomorrah, and he tries every avenue, and it doesn't work. Sodom and Gomorrah are overturned. He wants to do the ultimate sacrifice for God, to give up everything, absolutely everything for God. Instead, he has to offer a ram. Isaac is spared. It's an interesting theme in our parsha, what the Torah chooses to highlight, to focus upon. And it seems like there's an emphasis on events. There's a selection of different events of Abraham's life, specifically events that Abram wants to do something and is thwarted in one way or another. Now, when you make that observation and you notice that trend, there's a lot of different ways that you can try to understand what the message of the Torah is. So I think a very valid explanation, a very valid takeaway from this would be that the Torah is teaching us it's not the results that count, it's the effort. Lo alecha malacha ligmar. It's not upon you to finish the job, but you cannot shirk the responsibility of doing whatever you can to try to effectuate the completion of the job. Our philosophy is that our objective is to do whatever we can to achieve the goal that we're trying to achieve. Success and or failure is up to God. In this world, in our world, people maybe could be given some kudos for effort, but you failed. In the eyes of God, the only thing that matters is your effort. If someone tries to do a mitzvah, but they're thwarted for one reason or another, they still get the merit of the mitzvah because they do whatever they can. And some other circumstance contravened and prevented them from doing it. It's not their fault. If that other thing didn't happen, I would have done the mitzvah. Okay, God gives me the full reward as if I did the mitzvah. Anu amelim vehem amelim. This is a part of the text that said after someone has the great merit and fortune to finish a book of Talmud, and he compares himself, the Torah scholar compares himself to everyone, the whole rest of the world. And part of the statement is, we toil and they toil. We toil and get reward, and they toil and they don't get reward. And the commentaries explain, God rewards effort. Our society does not reward effort, it rewards results. God rewards effort. The results are in his hands, they're not in our hands. What I can do is the effort. That is what determines my reward. We toil and receive reward for the toil, even if the efforts do not actually pan out, do not actually achieve the desired goal. So Abraham, we see all these instances where Abram's trying to do something and the Torah's highlighting it. Seemingly, the Torah's curating these episodes where Abram tries to do something, wants to provide hospitality, they don't need it. Wants to save Sodom and Gomorrah, doesn't work. Wants to offer Isaac, doesn't happen. Angel stops him at the 90th minute, at the very end. And the Torah's telling us this is still Abraham's great achievements because it's the efforts and the attempts to try to achieve it. That's what matters. And the results are in the hands of God. That's one answer. But there's another answer. And it's a very deep and profound one. If you look at these episodes very closely, and you really examine them, and you see what our sages tell us about them, you'll find that not only was Abraham successful, he was monumentally successful. Abraham is a few days following his circumcision. He's in pain. He's in a very debilitating state, and it's very hot. And God appears to him in prophecy, and he has an opportunity to do kindness, to do hospitality. And he runs, and he wants to get the bread, and he wants to get the meat, and he runs in every direction. Says the Talmud, Abraham earned reward for that. What was the reward that Abraham received? Everything that Abraham went to go get for those angels, God repaid Abraham and Abraham's descendants measure for measure. Says the Talmud, this is in the book of Bava Metzia, page 86b. Page 86b. It says that Abraham ran to get the livestock, and that was repaid with his descendants for 40 years in the wilderness receiving the quail. And he ran to get the milk and the cream, and that was repaid by Abraham's descendants receiving manna from heaven. And he was, when he stood upon the tree waiting upon his guests, that was repaid by God giving Moshe prophecy. And there was one thing, says the Talmud, that Abraham didn't do on his own. Abraham did everything on his own, except for one thing. He says, Yukach na ma'at mayim, take some water. Take some water. He told them to go take some water. He didn't do it himself. Says the Talmud, there was one thing that God says, okay, you didn't do it by yourself, I'm going to do it by myself. I'll leave it up to you. The water was provided not like in a manna form, but Moshe had to go communicate with the rock and so on. So there's an amazing kind of observation here. If Abraham would have provided them the water, then God would have directly provided Abraham's descendants with the water. So Moshe would never have to speak with the rock, and Moshe would never hit the rock, and Moshe would never die, and Moshe would enter the land of Israel, and Moshe would have built the temple, it would never have been destroyed, there would never have been exile. That's the kind of the chain of events. Because Abraham said to the angels, you take the water on your own, God said to the nation, you guys are responsible for the water on your own. And that left room for human error or a human mistake to have very disastrous consequences. But regardless, you look at Abraham's story, on a spiritual level, Abraham is not only not failing, he's monumentally successful because he's earning the provisions for his descendants for 40 years in the wilderness. But there's more. When Moshe went up to heaven to get the Torah, the angels were very perplexed, were baffled by the appearance of an earthling in heaven. And then when God said to them, well, he's here to get the Torah, they were even more perplexed. What? The holy Torah? The cherished Torah? This treasure of God that you've created 974 generations before the creation of the world. You want to give it to humanity? That doesn't make any sense. And God responded, well, what's the alternative? What's the alternative? The alternative of not giving the Torah to humanity is to leave it here, right? In the heavens, the upper spheres, with the angels. But you angels are not compatible with Torah, says God. Why not? Look at Genesis. There's a story where angels were sent down to earth. And they went to Abraham. And Abraham fed them. And what did he give them? Well, he gave them meat, beef, and milk, and cream. It says it all in Scripture. So wait. Milk and meat? Those don't go together. We know the Torah. They don't go together. Wait, you angels, you ate that. You're not compatible with Torah because you ate something which is not, that's not kosher. And therefore, you cannot claim it's better for the Torah to stay here. I'm going to give the Torah to humanity. So the Midrash tells us. According to that Midrash, Abraham was extra successful because this whole episode may be unknown to anyone at the time. This episode actually enabled the transfer of Torah to the Jewish people. Despite our flaws and our shortcomings, we have an ability to have Torah. And the angels, they disqualified themselves, unbeknownst to them. Sodom and Gomorrah, they're going to be destroyed. And Abraham launches into this prayer, this petition. Maybe there's 50, maybe there's 45. It's a very long back and forth dialogue. But Abraham has a statement that he says. And he says, God, forgive me to ask further, and I am but dust and ashes. Abraham's a bit apologetic that he's requesting to save the city. And who is he to request? I mean, he's just dust and ashes. That's a line that he throws out. And the Talmud tells us, well, Abraham said this act of humility, I'm dust and ashes. In that merit, the nation of Abraham, the Jewish people, will merit a mitzvah with ashes and a mitzvah with dust. Huh, interesting. The ashes of the red heifer and the dust of a sota. Red heifer is turned to ashes, and that's sprinkled upon people who are impure. And the sota, the suspected adulteress, she is investigated by the bitter waters which are mixed. It's water that has some ink from the portion of the sota, and it has some dust, and that's mixed together, and that's given to the suspected adulteress to drink, and it determines whether or not she was unfaithful or not. So Abraham did earn those mitzvos by this statement, I am but dust and ashes. And it's interesting, Abraham's trying to save Sodom and Gomorrah from destruction. These are both mitzvos that save from destruction. If someone is impure, they tended to the dead body of someone. They were in a room when someone died. They buried the dead. There is only one way that they can restore their purity. It's only with the red heifer. And of course, the red heifer is a great mystery. We don't understand the deep secrets of the red heifer. But someone would have no spiritual method by which they can become pure. There's no spiritual rehabilitation, only the ashes of the red heifer. Abraham tried to save Sodom and Gomorrah from destruction. He ended up in this tangential way saving his descendants from spiritual destruction. A marriage that is rocked by claims of infidelity can only be saved with the waters of the sota. So Abraham's trying to save. It doesn't work. At least the salvation doesn't happen in that method, but it happens in some other way. Moreover, the commentaries tell us that Abraham's fierce petition to try to save Sodom and Gomorrah, it wasn't completely successful. Those cities were destroyed. But Abraham managed to save one person, we'll call it 4 or 3.5. Because Lot, his brother-in-law / nephew, Lot's wife, at least for some time, and his 2 unmarried daughters, they were spared. Why were they spared? They were righteous? No, they weren't righteous. They were spared in the merit of Abraham. God remembered Abraham and saved Lot. Abraham begins this divine entreatment to save Sodom and Gomorrah. He wants to save everyone. It's partially successful. He saves someone who would have otherwise been overturned with the rest of the city. Now, in our parsha, read what happens. There's a sordid aftermath to this story because Lot, and his 2 daughters are under the impression that the whole world's destroyed. Nuclear disaster. Everyone's dead. We got to start humanity over. It's just us. So they're in the cave, And there's this very unfortunate, very shameful event that happens where Lot and his daughters consort, and Lot actually impregnates his own daughters. And the result of that incest are two sons, Lot's illegitimate sons with his daughters. And those sons went on to found nations, the nations of Ammon and Moab. And we know Moab has a very important member of this nation, namely Ruth. So Ruth is a great-granddaughter, many generations, from Lot and his daughter. And Ruth, she herself is the great-grandmother of King David, and thus a great-great-grandmother of King Solomon, and thus a great-great-great-great-great-great-grandmother of Messiah. So in this very kind of convoluted way, Abraham actually earned with his prayer, he earned the seed of David. Because if not for Abraham's prayer, Lot would have been destroyed. Lot wouldn't have had a child with his daughter. Ruth wouldn't have been born. David wouldn't have existed. Messiah would have been snuffed out. So again, we miss this whole thing because we just see Abraham and Sodom and Gomorrah, he's doing this prayer, doesn't work. But you zoom out, you see that with Abraham's apparently failed prayer, Abraham ensured the creation and the continuation of the seed of Messiah. And finally, the parsha ends with binding of Isaac, an incredible act of self-sacrifice, of martyrdom, of determination to follow the will of God, come what may. And he binds Isaac, and he's on the altar, and he's got the fire, and he's got the wood, and got the scalpel, everything's ready to go, and the angel stops him. And instead, Abram offers another sacrifice. It's kind of an ordinary sacrifice. It's a ram whose horn was caught up in the branches. That replaces Isaac. Isaac endures. So we're happy that Isaac made it, but it seems like Abraham didn't actualize his plan. His plan to give up absolutely everything for God, that kind of failed. But when you zoom out and you look at this story and its consequences, you find that Abram was, again, monumentally successful. The name of the knife, of the scalpel, in the Torah, it's called a ma'achelas. Ma'achelas, which is an unusual word. Ma'achelas means it gives food. Why is the knife that Abram was supposed to use to offer Isaac as a sacrifice instead he used to offer the ram as a sacrifice? Why is it called a ma'achelas? It gives food. Our sages tell us, forever, our nation is eating, meaning we're spiritually nourished from this event. This event where Abraham wanted with every fiber of his being to listen to God, even though it made no sense, and even though it violated his promise that Isaac will be his continuation, even though it seemed so wrong, he was just determined to listen to God. And that determination earned merit that we are still eating from. It's still nourishing us until this day. Every Rosh Hashanah, we're in judgment. And they pull out a ram's horn, and specifically a ram's horn. Why? Because that will evoke the events of the binding of Isaac. Isaac and the binding ensures every year that we are forgiven from our sins. And I will tell you one more thing. And you're not going to like it. I know it. I know you're not going to like it. I don't care. If you have a problem, send it to HR at Torch Web. There we go, straight to spam. Straight to spam. And if not, we delete it, we block it. But that's fine. You can complain. You're not going to like it. I know you're not going to like it. There is some Kabbalistic literature about the binding of Isaac. And there's different versions of what happened. But if you read it very carefully, you read the story very carefully, which we're not trained to do. One of the benefits of going to the yeshiva to teach you to read things very, very carefully, because this is the Torah, and it doesn't always spell out exactly what it's trying to say. You look at the aftermath of the binding. All's well. The angel stopped Abram at the last moment. Abram, I know I can trust you now. Now I know that you fear God. Don't touch Isaac. Instead, offer the ram. All's well, right? All's well. What happens at the end? At the end, Abram goes back home. Is that right? The angel gives him a blessing. This is in chapter 22 of Genesis. We read this on the second day of Rosh Hashanah, not a coincidence. I will bless you. I will increase your descendants like the stars of the heaven, like the sand on the edge of the sea. Beautiful blessing. All the nations of the world will be blessed through your descendants. And the end of the story, this is in 22:19. Vayashav Avraham el Na'arav. There's still two lads there with the donkey at the bottom of the mountain. They're waiting for Abraham to return, Abraham and Isaac maybe to return. The verse says, Vayashav Avraham, and Abraham returned to his his lads. Isn't there someone missing? Shouldn't have said that Abraham and Isaac returned? What happened to Isaac after the binding? How come he doesn't join Abraham when they return down the mountain? The verse says very clearly, Abraham returned to his lads, and they went to Beersheba. Abraham settled Beersheba. Where's Isaac? That's a great mystery. What happened to Isaac in the aftermath of the binding? Now, there's different versions in the Kabbalistic literature. Some say, well, Isaac went to go study. So it doesn't tell us that, but we know he's not with Abraham. He went to study for 3 years. He doesn't show up again in the story until later, until he rendezvous with Rebecca on the way back from Eliezer picking up Rebecca and with the 10 camels. Remember that story. But what happens to Isaac in the interim? It's a great mystery. A great mystery. So again, some of the literature says he went to go study. That's wonderful. Some of the other literature says, well, Isaac wasn't slaughtered by Abraham, but he sort of died already. He was dead. What? I said you wouldn't like it. I knew you wouldn't like it. Isaac's soul departed. Not because Abraham sacrificed him. Isaac's soul departed. And he was kind of left behind. He died of natural causes or unnatural causes. Okay. I will read to you what it says here, just so you know that I'm not making this up. Now, what I'm going to tell you now, don't ask me any questions about it because I'm answers I don't know. So just, if you have any questions about what I'm going to say now, don't ask them to me because my answer already, I'll tell it to you right now. It's I don't know. According to the sources, when Abraham sacrificed the ram had a soul in it, the soul of Isaac. Isaac's soul departed him, went into the ram, so he did kind of offer Isaac as a sacrifice because the ram harbored the soul of Isaac. But there's another wrinkle to this. Isaac, according to our sources, had a feminine soul. Now you'll say, well, what's a feminine soul? My answer is, I don't know. I just told you, I don't know anything about these things. Isaac had a feminine soul, specifically the soul of Eve. What? I don't know what this means. Again, I don't know. And at the time of the binding, Isaac wasn't slaughtered, but his soul flew out of him and came into the ram. And therefore, when Abraham slaughtered the ram, he was effectively slaughtering Isaac. It wasn't the body of Isaac, it was the soul of Isaac. And then, sometime later, doesn't say, maybe right away, maybe 3 years later, I don't know, a new soul was given to Isaac. This soul is masculine. That's what it says. And if you ask me any questions, I have to get like one of those little signs, like, that was easy. I don't know. I don't know anything about these things. But according to the sources, Isaac got a masculine soul. He was given a new soul. I don't know how, I don't know when, I don't know anything about this. But I will tell you that we read the story on a simple level. We know nothing about this. But Abraham was very disturbed, or at least we would be disturbed by God telling him to go offer Isaac as a sacrifice, because God just, in the Torah, tells him, Isaac will be your continuation. He'll be the father of this nation that we're founding over here. Ki bi Yitzchak Yisrael Chazara. Your descendants, your legacy, your destiny will be fulfilled with Isaac and his descendants. And then God tells you to go sacrifice him. And indeed, not only were these two things not contradictory, one was the fulfillment of the other. The only way that Isaac can have continuity is if somehow there's a soul within him. It's the soul of Eve. What this has to do with Eve is a great question. Again, we don't know. You have to really think very deeply to understand what's the connection between Eve and Isaac, and why does the binding somehow ameliorate whatever the soul of Eve needed. There's something that Eve's soul that was squatting in Isaac needed, and that was fulfilled with the binding of the Isaac, where the soul, the feminine soul of Isaac that came from Eve, it somehow jumped into the ram. Again, we don't know anything about this. But the only way that Isaac could have had continuity is if somehow there was a process by which that soul was replaced, that was swapped for a masculine soul. Abraham thought, we would have thought, that he was told something which is contradictory. Actually, the only way to fulfill it, the only way that for Isaac to indeed have continuity, it's only via the monumentally successful event of the binding of Isaac. So what's the bottom line? The bottom line is we have all these stories, and Abraham's storyline of the Torah is quite curiously curated. We don't know why certain stories are omitted, why Abraham's heroism and his pioneering spirit in teaching the world about monotheism, all that's omitted. All those debates, all those arguments, the smashing of the idols, going from place to place, arguing, debating, being flung with a catapult into the fiery furnace, all that's not told explicitly in the Torah. It's hinted to, sure, it's not told explicitly in the Torah. And what is told seems, when you read it on a surface level, it seems to be events where Abraham wanted something and did not end up with that. You burrow a bit deeper, you find that actually those things that Abraham may have thought, that we would have thought, were abject failures. That's what built the nation. That's what ensured continuity for the nation. Isaac was given the ability to be the father of a great nation. The Jewish people earned the rights to have Torah extracted from heaven, away from the angels, to us. Our continuity in the wilderness, the nourishment that we received, all that was in the merit of Abraham's kindness, his apparent failure of kindness. All that actually redounded greatly to our benefit. Maybe a lesson for us is sometimes, we don't see the fruits of our labor. We work hard. We want to do what's right. We want to follow God. We want to advance our spiritual agenda. We want to develop ourselves, hone our spiritual qualities, refine ourselves, and we seem to kind of hit a brick wall. We hit a brick wall. We hit a brick wall. We seem to not have the payoff that we sought. There's a much bigger plan. There's a bigger plan. There was a much bigger plan for Abraham, but even for us, there's a plan. And our job is to put our best effort forward and to invest whatever efforts that we do have, the capacities that we do have to do what's right. Ultimately, the success of our efforts, it's all in the hands of the Almighty. We must do the effort. The payoff, the impact, that is in the hands of God. Abraham, he was trying to do kindness. It didn't really work in one way. In some very different way, he was able to do tremendous kindness for a nation of millions for 40 years. Abraham wants to save Sodom and Gomorrah. He fails. But in his counterintuitive, circuitous manner, he ensures that David will be born, that Ruth will be born, that Solomon will be born, that all the long line of kings will be born. Many of our great leaders came from that line, and certainly the leader that we're waiting for still today, that's a descendant of Abraham via this very long and convoluted storyline. Because of Abraham's prayer, Sodom and Gomorrah was only partially destroyed. Lot was spared, Messiah and David were spared, and the binding of Isaac, while not, at least on the surface, a fulfillment of Abraham's plan, we only exist today. We're only eating, nourishing. We're only being nourished from this wonderful story. It's a beautiful parsha. Abraham is, again, the most pivotal and consequential figure of all time. And we have the great privilege of reading the story every year. And I think we get a little window, a little insight into how to learn the Torah maybe a bit deeper, and how for us, maybe in the failures that we may have in our life, it actually may be a great success in disguise. I thank you for listening. Have a wonderful week. And my email address is rabbiwolbe@gmail.com. I thank you all for joining us here in the Torch Center in Houston. I feel the pressure of the next class coming up here. You guys hear here? They're making more and more noise outside. They're slowly going to creep in and say, "No, it's fine. You can stay as long as you want. That's fine. Do you mind if I sit right next to you? It's okay." So I feel like you feel them breathing down your back. But this was a delight. Oh, he's here. Oh, wow. This was a delight. I get an email that says rabbi@gmail.com. Okay. Go ahead, Harvey. Loud.
Two quick questions. Ivri, besides meaning from the other side of the Jordan River, what's the other origin you said of that term?
From Shem and Aver. Shem and Aver. There's someone named Aver. Ivri means Aver. Means from this individual named Aver.
There's a character named Aver. And
yes.
Also, the Torah doesn't seem to say what was the age of Isaac at the time of the Akedah.
It doesn't say, according to the Midrash, he was 37.
37?
Yes.
The Torah doesn't say.
Torah doesn't say explicitly. That's right.
Okay. I know you're not right. Thank you. Great class. Super.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. They're coming in here. They're all outside. Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
Okay, I have two questions. One is, it struck me the description that Abraham uses of himself as dust and ashes. And then in your book, we really, it's really discussed about how, well, that was Adam. The rest of us are water, future drops. So I'm just wondering, is there any significance about him, why we, what's the distinction? Is there any meaning in that?
I think there is. Okay, so I'll just, to explain your question, the Talmud says that, okay, there's a few moving parts here, but the Talmud does say that there's a difference in the way Adam was created and the way all of humanity is created, because Adam wasn't created, he had no father. He was created out of dust by God directly. Whereas you were kind of created, at least biologically, there's parents and there's the kind of primordial biological material that we have a gestation period and so on. We're born in a very different way than Adam was created. And the Talmud indicates that in Olam Haba, the world to come, there's going to be a restoration of the Adam system, where everything's created out of dust. And you want to suggest, Paul, that when Abraham says, "I am but dust and ashes," to us, dust seems like, that's it's humility, right? I'm just dust. Well, actually, what you're proposing, no. Abraham himself is like Adam. He personally is someone who has restored the Adam before his sin level of purity. You are 100% correct. Because in fact, our sages do say that. They don't necessarily connect it to this verse. But they do say that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, each one of them fits the different part of Adam's sin. And that's why the nefesh and the ruach and the neshama, which are three parts of the soul that were corrupted by Adam, each one of those three fits one part of those three parts of the soul. So you want to point out, "I am but dust." It's actually a great compliment that the Torah is saying. The Torah is endorsing this, right? It's in the Torah. So Abraham actually was dust. What dust? He's Adam. Adam before his sin. Wow, that's a very clever point. Paul, very, very clever. I wholeheartedly endorse that.
Great. Thanks for that answer. That's very helpful. The second question is, this goes about bodies containing souls, and we've had lots of discussion about this, and it's discussed in your book. But I was thinking of in Bereshis when Eve is created, so Adam's dust and ashes, soul blown into him, Eve's pulled apart. So her soul is in Adam to begin with. And I think I recall you saying that all of the Jewish people's souls were contained in Adam. And I'm just wondering, how to make sense of that.
I think this is one of the subjects that I have to say I don't know.
Okay.
I think so. It's a very complicated question.
Okay.
And I think also my book I wrote that it's the soulology. I don't get into the soulology. It's too much. Yes, our sages do say that Adam had a more expansive soul, and there's 600,000 parts to that soul. That's the 600,000 souls of the Jewish people. But it's at least a full class we have to do on that, at least maybe a full semester.
You put it on the list.
Yeah.
Say the next one.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Hey, go ahead. Yeah, sure.
Getting a teaching today, you said that Abraham was the only one that was out there seeking. Where was Shem and Melchizedek?
Yes, that's a good question. So Mary Lou wants to know, what about Shem / Melchizedek? Wasn't he also a believer? So the answer is yes, he was, but he had a tradition. He was a son of Noah. Noah overlapped with Adam's generation. So it's not quite the same thing, because Abram discovered it on his own, whereas Shem, he had it via tradition. And therefore, he's in a different class. Yes, and there's other differences between the two, but Shem was a believer, 100%, but he arrived at it in a different way. He had it just from his father, from that tradition, going back to Adam. Abram started with nothing, and he discovered it on his own. And that's what's on a higher level. Yes. Yes. That's right. That's right. Yes. Yeah. Abraham was someone who was always trying to actively proselytize to faith. Whereas Shem was like, you come to me, I'll teach you. Otherwise, you're on your own. You want to join the ark? You want to come up? Fine. Because he was the son of Noah, right? It was more like a different philosophy. We have our ark. You want to join? Great. I'm not going to go pursue you. That's not Abraham. But that's why he's on a lower level. Okay. I guess we'll call it a wrap here, because otherwise we're gonna get violent.
For our ancestors. So our ancestor is Abraham, because he went to the nations.
So okay, it's a good question, and that's a halakha question. I from what I understand, the halakha is that when someone converts, they actually become a biological descendant of Abraham. So when we say father, it can mean, in this context, it means father means literally the father, biological father. So a non-Jew would not say father unless they convert. They convert, then they biologically become a descendant of Abraham. So yes, I mean, he could be like the father of many nations, but in the context that we use it in prayer, we use it in the most maximalist way. It means the father inspiring, but also father, like literal father. And also, it's important to note, what about Ishmael? The Torah itself says no, because with Isaac, he will be your descendant. The Torah is in effect saying Isaac and not Ishmael, Isaac and not the sons of Keturah. Abraham had biological children, and the Torah kind of removes the biological connection to anyone besides for Isaac. So Ishmael, if you look at the DNA, there's an Abrahamic connection. Torah says no, that's not it. Abraham is the father of many nations, including the Ishmaelite nations, but in the most maximalist sense, he's not a descendant of Abraham. You have a chance? Sort of kind. I'll take that.
Right.
Okay, this was a delight. Before they get violent, let's was good to see everyone here on Zoom. See everyone next week or Tuesday night if you join the Tuesday night class.
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Be there